Greetings to our comrades and friends. Allow me to first congratulate, on behalf of the U.S. Peace Council, the organizers of this very important historical celebration of 75 years of China's revolution, which has turned China into a powerful global force for peace and human progress. I am honored to be part of this important event. A lot can be said about the magnificent achievements of China, especially during the last few decades, and particularly under the leadership of President Xi Jinping. But due to the shortness of time, I would limit myself to the area of diplomacy and global security, especially since both ruling parties in the United States are presenting China's rapid development and its growing role in the international arena as a threat to the interests of the United States, which is a clear falsehood promoted by the U.S. ruling classes to justify their antagonistic policy toward China. Let us look at China's approach to diplomacy and global security, which is significantly different from the crisis-oriented zero-sum diplomacy that is characteristic of the United States approach. In November 2023, a U.S. Peace Council delegation was officially invited by the Chinese People's Association for Peace and Disarmament, CPAPD, which is affiliated with China's Foreign Ministry, to visit China for a bilateral meeting. The issues that we discussed were quite multifaceted and included the question of China's global security initiative, China's diplomatic efforts, China's modernization process, U.S.-China relationship and the need for commitment to peaceful diplomacy, and ways to strengthen the global peace movement, all as integral part of President Xi Jinping's thoughts and policy. What became quite clear through these lengthy discussions is that on the issue of diplomacy and global security, there is a fundamental divergence in core values between U.S. and China. As far as the Chinese are concerned, they are firmly committed to the following 6 principles as articulated by President Xi Jinping and reflected in China's policy on diplomacy and global security. First, it is necessary to stay committed to the vision of common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable security and work together to maintain world peace and security. 2. It is necessary to stay committed to respecting the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all countries, upholding non-interference in the internal affairs of other nations, and respecting the independent choices of development paths and social systems made by the people in different countries. 3. Staying committed to abiding by the principles of United Nations Charter, rejecting Cold War and Cold War mentality, opposing multilateralism, saying no to bloc confrontations. 4. It is necessary to stay committed to taking the legitimate security concerns of all countries seriously, upholding the principles of indivisibility of security, building a balanced, effective, and sustainable security architecture, and opposing the pursuit of one's own security at the expense of the security of others. 5. Staying committed to peaceful resolution of differences and disputes between countries through dialogue and consultation, supporting all efforts conducive to the peaceful settlement of crises, rejecting double standards and opposing the wanton use of unilateral sanctions and long-term jurisdiction. And 6. It is necessary to stay committed to maintaining security in both traditional and non-traditional domains and working together on regional disputes and global challenges such as terrorism, climate change, cybersecurity, and biosecurity. Putting all this together, it means building a global community with a shared future for mankind, promoting common development, pursuing peaceful development based on mutual respect and win-win cooperation, and steering the reform of the global governance system toward the principle of fairness and justice. China has demonstrated its commitment to these principles in action. It would suffice just to mention the historic agreement brokered by China between Saudi Arabia and Iran that effectively ended the Obama's war in Yemen, or China's recent effort to bring various factions of the Palestinian resistance movement together, or its latest peace proposal, together with Brazil, for the war in Ukraine. With these principles and actions, no rational mind can be persuaded to see China as a threat to the United States. If any threat can be attributed to China, it is the threat of its peaceful policies to unilateralism and warmongering policies of the United States ruling classes. In contrast, U.S. diplomacy has as its core system of values the doctrine of full spectrum dominance, a military political doctrine produced by the U.S. Department of Defense and has its genesis in the worldview and principles of the neocon project for the American century. This project, which has now become the essential feature of the U.S. national security strategy, sees its objective not just the ability to project U.S. military power globally, but also includes economic, political, and even cultural dominance through the use of information, media, and entertainment, and all aspects of knowledge production. It is a doctrine that explicitly sees the rise of any independent regional or global power as an existential threat to its hegemony, regardless of its political and ideological orientation. It is in this context that not only China, but the democratically elected President Maduro of Venezuela, or the struggles of the people of Palestine to defend their human rights, is considered a threat to the interests of the United States. The genocide that is taking place in Palestine right before our eyes at the hands of the US and Israel, with the rest of the world unable to bring the perpetrators of this crime of genocide to justice, is a graphic example who is the real threat to our world today. The US imperialism feels threatened because its unilateralism, hegemonism, and its attempt to impose a so-called rules-based international order where the US and the Western allies make the rules and others are forced to follow is coming to an end. That is why the US is becoming increasingly desperate and more dangerous in its efforts to prevent the inevitable historical transition that is being led by China and the countries of the South. It is therefore the US imperialism, not China, that constitutes the threat to peace and security of the world. It is our responsibility to open people's eyes to this critical fact. Thank you.